Welcome to another episode of The Marketer's Edge, a series designed to share senior level marketing perspective about marketer challenges, opportunities, and agency relationships. Our goal is to help marketers learn from other marketers across different industries and help provide perspective for agencies about the things marketers deal with every day to help them better represent their clients and win new business. Today, we're talking with Jerry Clum, CEO of Hommati, a franchisor for real estate services that's designed to generate more traffic and inquiries, sell homes faster, and for higher selling prices. Jerry, thanks so much for joining us today. How have you been?
I'm doing great, Mark. Thank you for asking.
That's great. I was looking forward to our talk today. You have an interesting concept, and excited to learn a little bit more about it and get some insights from you. Before I dive into those questions, maybe you could tell me a little bit about Homati, how it's structured, and a little bit about the services that it offers.
Sure, Mark. We're a national franchise system. We currently have about 132 franchise locations. We're in 38 different states, and we're serving roughly 6,000 real estate agents. We're adding a new franchise location about every 7 days, and probably about 150 or so new agents start working with us each month. What our franchisees do, we provide innovative services, as you said, to help agents sell more homes, sell them faster, sell them for a higher sales price, and help them win more listings. Some of the services that we provide are things like 3D tours. So folks from remotely can go inside a home in a doll house 3D environment and walk through the home. They can walk upstairs and downstairs. They can look up at the ceilings and see what type of ceiling fixtures are in each room, look at the floor, see what type of flooring is there. And it's so immersive, you can actually walk up to every window in the house and actually see the view outside those windows. So it's much
Wow.
more telling than just simple photography work. There's also in addition to that, there's a virtual tour option. So the 3D tour is typically done, it's kind of ironic that it's called 3D, but typically it's done on a smartphone device or a laptop or tablet or something. The virtual reality is done with VR headsets. So it puts you in the same environment, but in that environment, it covers your complete peripheral vision. And rather than use a mouse to navigate, you're using your actual head to look up and down and back and forth. We also do things like drone aerial videos where we put background music, and it's a really nice production, but there's practical reasons for that as well. They get an opportunity to see how big is the lot, how close is the home to the neighbor's home, even check out the shingles, see is there anything curling, anything missing, anything blown off, etc. So our goal is to help show homes from every perspective. So if you're not able to be physically out there, you're able to at least see everything you possibly can see from these different medias. And the goal here is not only to help agents sell more homes, but to reduce the number of showings they have to physically go out and do so they can show, 10 virtual tours to their clients and only pick the one or two of their favorites to actually physically go out and show, because agents spend a lot of time showing homes. We also
Right.
do things like virtual staging where we take a home that's vacant and there's empty rooms, and we'll digitally stage it with furnishings. We can pick a theme: rustic, contemporary, modern, industrial, whatever they're looking for. Put paintings on the walls, curtains on the windows, rugs on the floor, fire in the fireplace, and it makes the room more appealing than just empty rooms. What we found, Mark, is there's a direct correlation between how long people spend on the listing and whether they convert into an actual inquiry or not.
Hmm.
So, with 93% of people starting their home search on the internet, keeping them on those pages longer is really increasing the conversion rate by about 400%.
Right.
For instance, the 3D tour, they stay 3 minutes and 38 seconds longer on that page. That's a lifetime in internet time. For sure.
Right.
But
Right.
we also do things like HDR photography, which is bracketed photos, magazine-like quality photos, schematic floor plans. There's just an array of services that we're providing to help agents show homes from every perspective.
That's great. So when did you start the business?
We started prototyping it in 2017.
Okay.
Ironically, I had no intentions of starting a business. I was retired. I put my house up for sale, was going to be moving south, and I was single at the time and had this really way too big a house for a single guy. And the agent that came to list it, we kind of fell for each other, and I've been with her ever since. It's been about 10 years. And she's a top real estate agent. She sells about 250 houses a year. And she'd come home at night with some of the problems that she was having. And I sat down and built what's called a predictive model, looked at the demographic shifts and trends that was happening,
Hmm.
and started creating what ended up becoming Hamadi and obviously another business.
That's great. That's great. So it's yeah, quite amazing just the variety of services that you guys bring to the table. It's really awesome. So the $1 million question is, with the market being as red hot as it's been over the last couple of years, how does a brand like Homati capture the attention of agents and home buyers? Is it different today than, say when in 18 or 19 or 20, well, I guess 20 was partly the pandemic, but so how do you capture the attention of agents and home buyers, and how is it different today than maybe a few years ago?
Sure. I'll break that into two parts here. Let's start with the
Yeah.
agents. And essentially, sometimes you just have to change the script, right? You can go and market something one way, and then if the market changes, you've got to change the script in terms of how you market. So when we first
Right.
got started, we were all about the fact that we do a lot of volume. I mean, we're doing tens of thousands of packages, and there's not a lot of competition out there. This is a relatively new industry. When we started it, it wasn't even an industry. They just had some services available, and we were one of the pioneers that had formed this industry. And no one really knew a whole lot about these services. So we sold it on the basis of, we can do this package of 14 services for about the
Mhm.
same cost of what agents are already spending for just photography work. And with the increase in traffic and inquiries and everything you're getting, it became a no-brainer. But then the market shift. We had plenty of listings at that time, but now the inventory kept shrinking and shrinking and shrinking, and we had
Yeah.
to change the script and capture agents' attention by essentially saying, look, you don't need these services to sell houses. They're going to sell with or without these services. But because it's so competitive to get listings in the first place because inventory is low, you need these services so you can discuss it with sellers at the listing presentation and be more competitive to them. So you can have a competitive advantage over other agents that may not be using these things so you can
Got
win
it.
more listings in the first place.
Got it. So using the technology to help get more listings, the offerings.
Absolutely, absolutely. And when it comes to
Interesting.
home buyers, I kind of captured that portion of it previously. The fact that keeping people on a listing longer, I mean, it's kind of boring when you go out and look at houses, especially if they're vacant images. You just see a few pictures, and people have a tendency to stroll through and look at a lot of different listings. If you can keep them on the listing longer, and this is what this dynamic content actually does, it will convert them into an inquiry, and then
Mhm.
nothing even happens until you get the inquiry, obviously, as an agent.
Right, right. Interesting. Do you help agents market themselves and the technology services that you offer, and they have as part of their franchise agreement with you?
Well, the agents don't have a franchise agreement. The franchisees do. The agents, they're
Okay,
working with the franchisees. But
got it,
from
got it.
what we do for them is, in addition to the services, we set up a unique page on Hamadi, and other vendors that are offering services, they're going to give them direct links to the 3D tour, direct links to the video, and the links that they're giving them are view-only links to third-party
Got it.
platforms. Since we have this searchable real estate, we give them a link to hamadi.com/1234 East Main Street. Everything's baked in on that one page, so they can use one link and put that in the MLS and market all the services. But from that standpoint, we also automatically do social media marketing. We'll post the property automatically to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram,
Hmm.
and help them market. And we pay for that marketing out of our own pocket. So it's
Got it.
not just about doing the services, it's also about helping them generate more
Right.
traffic, more eyeballs, more potential inquiries, et cetera.
That's great. Yep. Maybe just looking at your background, you've started and led many different franchise businesses over your career. Is there something unique about Homati that makes it more challenging or different than some of the businesses you've started up?
Well, I've always had a tendency to be in businesses or business models that were just on the forefront of becoming an industry. I do
Okay.
predictive modeling, look at demographic shifts and trends, and I try to be the one that gets out in front to set the trend rather than follow it. But with Hamadi, we were really way above the time and marketplace. You know, things like 3D tours, when we first got started 2017, 2018, real estate agents really didn't have a clue what they were. We showed them, they're thinking maybe this is something that's before its time. So it took a lot of education. Well, of course, the pandemic changed all of that. You know, when
Hmm.
everybody was locked down, they couldn't go out and show homes anymore. In most states, real estate was still considered a mission essential service, so they could still sell homes, they just couldn't show them. So we had this huge rush into us to start doing 3D tours so people could remotely view the homes, and they actually created drive-through closing, title agency closing offices, so they close right there in the car. And we had a lot of agents telling us they were selling a lot of houses, even sight unseen, just through the 3D tours. So the pandemic actually, with the things like Zoom meetings and live streaming video and all the technology that's created, the pandemic actually moved us maybe 2 to 3 years into the future by
Right.
educating people what these things were.
That's great. Yep. And as you think about all the franchise businesses that you've run, are there some common threads that carry through all of them, either similarities in the challenges or the ways in which you expect them to grow and how you support them?
Yeah, the thing about franchising, it's not any different than a lot of other businesses or athletic careers or acting or anything else. The franchisor can advise and guide and give the tools and provide sort of a roadmap to follow, but the franchisees themselves are the ones that are going to assure either their success or not as big success. It really depends on them. It's at their level, how much of they time and attention and energy and passion and what they go out and do. So we really try to do the best job we can at the very beginning stages of talking to people to find those folks we think are going to be the best at going out and talking to folks and explaining these services. We're not
Got it.
an if you build it, they will come type model. I mean, there's
Okay.
lots of fast food restaurants and stuff, you put it on the street, people are going to stop. But we have to go out and educate the marketplace. So the biggest difference really comes down to the fact that you need the right people. And that's true about anything
Sure.
in all reality.
Right. Yep. I know there are lots of platforms out there to attract franchisees into businesses like yours, or traditional methods, digital events and conferences. Is there one or some that you feel historically have been best producers for you, not just for Homati, but just in, across the experience that you've had?
Well, I've seen pretty much everything in the last 27 years of being in franchising. So, when we first got started, it was all about the big national business opportunity ads, or excuse me, the big national opportunity magazines. That's how everybody was
Okay.
really generating most of their lead volume. That's really not the case nowadays. And things like events and expos, those were great ways. They still are great ways, but generally speaking, you're only pulling from that market or maybe several hours from that market. If you're looking at expanding on a national basis, digital is the absolute only way to go. You've got to go out, you've got to find the most effective franchise portals. There's companies out there that advertise, franchise opportunities for sale. You've got to get real good at pay-per-click, SEO, and drive people through and understand the funnel systems and the pipeline at keeping people go through. So digital is really obviously how everything's done today. Probably pretty much no matter what business you're in, digital is going to be the major part of your marketing if you want to be growing quickly.
Yeah. Was that the case pre-pandemic as well, or did the pandemic
Yeah,
just
yeah.
accelerate that?
Of course, the pandemic accelerated everything digital because we were all locked
Sure.
in, and our only outside source was
Yep.
television, video streaming, and digital. But it's been something that's been in the mix for a long time. I was one of the first franchises on a website called franchise.com, which was one of the first franchise opportunity sites. And I didn't do it because I thought it was a great idea. I didn't have any insight. I just couldn't afford full page ads in the magazines like other franchisors. So I worked out a deal where my concept was going to be the first thing on their front page when people got there, and we did that over a long-term time frame. And as it turned out, the internet wasn't just for computer geeks as they thought. It was for everybody, and it panned out to be a very good situation, and we've been using the internet ever since.
That's great. All the work that you do with SEO and digital ad placement, is that stuff that you just do internally yourself or with a team, or do you bring outside support in to help you? Or
Yeah, both. We have an internal
okay,
team that does both our tech support as well as digital marketing and things of this nature, but we also use outside teams. When we look for the digital side, there's a lot of elements here. Search engine optimization changes consistently. Google algorithms change, and you've got to
right.
be able to know and stay up to speed. And sometimes having people internally is just not enough. So we use both inside and outside to attack the digital side of the equation.
Got it. Got it. Okay. And any advice you'd give to a fellow budding entrepreneur looking to start a franchise business?
Sure. A couple things I think is important. When I first started my franchise, which was another company back 27 years ago, we started franchising. It built. You got to start with a good model. You've got to have it tested, proven, make sure it works, and then you've got to be honest with yourself. Is it working just because of me or something I'm doing or this particular market, or is it something that's franchisable? Is it going to work in other markets? And then once you figure that part out of it, you've got to figure out what is your niche? What's your unique selling proposition? What makes you different than everybody else? If you don't have that, it's kind of hard to believe, but you're not probably going to have much success no matter how much people like you locally if you don't have a really strong, unique selling proposition because other folks in other areas don't have the years of what you've built up in your particular area to go off of. You definitely need a lot more money than you think to start a franchise. The very first time I did it, I went to the dog and pony shows, sort of the Shark Tanks of their time. I went to banks. Nobody was loaning me money, and I definitely wanted to build that franchise, and I essentially used all my life savings, and I took 23 credit cards, and I took cash advances on all of those to pull together $250,000 to start franchising it. I don't recommend that by any stretch of the
Yeah,
imagination, but there is ways to get money if you really need it. But you're probably going to need
sure.
a minimum of $250,000. People sometimes don't realize just how expensive it is building your ops manual, getting your franchise disclosure document and franchise agreements put together, and all the things you need to do before you're even allowed to start franchising. So have a good unique selling proposition, make sure it's scalable in other markets, and have enough money behind it to give yourself a good chance of success.
Okay. Couple questions, just sort of piggybacking on that. So, if I'm a budding entrepreneur and I've got this great idea, how do I determine, or how would you suggest I determine whether my USP, the unique selling proposition, is really a unique selling proposition?
Well, that's the $64 million question there, if it is or not. Most entrepreneurs want to feel what they have is a very unique selling proposition, but start by looking at all the competition in the marketplace and see, does your unique selling proposition really set you apart from what their unique selling proposition is? There has been a lot of franchises come and go, a lot of businesses. 80% of businesses don't last the first couple of years in business. Franchises have a little higher success rate, but that's because they've already went through the success process. You got to see, what is everybody else doing? How are you different? And there's not really a set formula that you can do. Depending on the products and services you have, maybe you try your advertising long distance, even though you may not have a city there. Just see what kind of response you get, and then call them back and tell them it was a test and you apologize. But are you getting the same response and feedback that you're getting from your market?
Hmm. Okay, that's great. And then you mentioned scalable. How does one determine whether their idea truly is scalable? What kind of things do they need to be looking at or thinking about?
A lot of businesses will depend 100% on the founder, the entrepreneur's experience in that business. I'll give you an example. I mean, most of us have went to a restaurant. It was the buzz on the street. It was a restaurant everybody was talking about. Hard to get a seat. Maybe you were on a list for a month, or you waited for hours. And at some point in time, later in the future, that business, that restaurant wasn't such the talk of the town. You could walk right in. It just wasn't as difficult to get in. Well, generally, what can happen in that situation is maybe the chef that had all this great experience decides they want to start expanding and opening other locations. And now it's not them there. It's a carbon copy of them, and it doesn't have the same love they cooked into the food, nonetheless. So you got to make sure the business is duplicatable and scalable. It doesn't depend wholly on you. Now, all businesses are going to depend wholly on you in the initial stages, but you've got to get to a point where can you transition your business into more of a passive absentee equation where you can put a manager in place, let them run the show, the full P&L responsibility. Maybe you keep some of the financial aspects. If you're successful in that degree, then it's more likely scalable than not.
Got it. That's great. That's great. Great counsel on both those
Thank you.
topics. So, just jumping back to the world of real estate sales, as you look forward, what's your prediction on the state of real estate sales? How do you think it'll look or be different than it looks today? Say as we look, 2, 3 years out.
Well, I mean, if I could predict that, I probably wouldn't be here because there'd be a lot of opportunities otherwise, at a much grander scale if you could predict the real estate market or the stock market. But let's put this in perspective. We have seen the economy continue to grow to the point where a lot of people will tell you that maybe it's overvalued, maybe it's just too high. I mean, in spite of the pandemic, we still haven't fully recovered from that. It continues to go up. And the real estate market has a tendency to kind of follow that market. So if you were of the mindset to believe that the economy, in terms of stock market, et cetera, is going to start scaling back a little bit, maybe we are going to become more of a bear market or bull market. I don't remember which one's which, but the bottom line is if the stock market starts scaling back, so will the real estate market as well. It's been a seller's market for the last 5, 6, 7 years. It's been a strong seller's market for the last couple of years, and the inventory is short. When that starts becoming more of a neutral market, you're going to see a lot more houses hit the marketplace. The appreciation levels in terms of what they've been able to sell for, which has been 10, 15% more than a lot of times they really should be selling for, is going to start scaling back. It'll become more of a neutral market. And then I would suspect if you're going to give me 2 to 3 years, it will likely become a buyer's market before the end of that 3 years. Maybe not a strong buyer's market, but I suspect that's probably the direction that we're heading. At least we're banking on it because we have been in the worst of the two markets. We've been doing fantastic. Our growth has been phenomenal. I couldn't be more happy than I am. But it's the worst of the two markets. The less listings we have, the less jobs that we have. The more listings that are there, the more jobs that we have to do.
Yeah. I know when I started our outsourced agency new business side of our business back in '05, I thought about scalability and I thought about unique selling proposition, but I didn't really think about um, what happens if the market, goes down. We had the
Right, right.
huge bubble burst in 2008, and didn't really think about those things going in. What's the downside? And fortunately, was able to sort of weather it pretty well. But would you advise that a budding entrepreneur think about those sorts of things going into? I mean, you can never predict perfectly, but should you be thinking about those things going into?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's
Okay,
unfortunate sometimes because we get, I guess, spoiled with an economy a certain way for a certain amount of
hmm,
time, and we
sure,
forget. We have a short memory span of what can happen. And I see folks, they're doing really well. Their businesses are growing exponentially, but it's a business that's not recession resistant, and things start coming down. They start cutting back, and that could really, really hurt you. So you have to prepare for it financially, put more away. Don't spend like this, like you're at the the beginning career of an NFL career, right? Just spend, 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 spend. This is going to last forever, and it won't always last forever. You've got to push things back and be smart with your money when you're starting a business. But look at this; it's all absolutely a guess for all practical purposes. What will the
Sure.
economy do to my business? But if you're open and honest with yourself, I think you'll have the answers. And if you're doing something that's just absolutely only effective in one of the two economies, a good economy or bad economy, you better pick up your chips while you can, because we don't know what's going to, you may not have an
Sure.
opportunity there later. So I always
Sure.
try to find businesses that have somewhat a little bit of recession resistance. And in terms of Hamadi, people have a tendency to think if the economy goes down, then we'll have issues. But the bottom line is, as the economy goes down, more houses hit the marketplace. We have more work. I mean, the Great Depression, there was more houses listed than any other time in the history of America.
Yeah.
So we'll have that work, and agents, there'll be so much business out there that agents will have to do something to break their
Right.
listings out from the pack. So we're in a really good place in terms of whether this business can weather bad economic times. It would actually be better for us.
Yeah. Yep. Interesting. Well, I've got two last questions for you.
Sure.
Any advice you'd give a marketer thinking about bringing a new agency on board to support, whatever parts of their service or their business they feel they need outside support for? Any advice you'd give them?
Sure. I would tell them that they should probably interview some current customers. There's a lot of different agencies. We work with a lot of different agencies, and what we have found is sometimes, and I'm not going to say always, but sometimes the real large agencies, there's just too much of a disconnect there. That maybe they don't understand your model, or have they taken the time to understand your model, and you just become an account. And sometimes the representatives that are in direct contact with you, you're one of 50 businesses that they're working on. Uh, my preference is to smaller, more boutique shops that you're going to have. You can talk to people that are higher up, that understands your business, that can help you with the right message.
Yeah, that's great. That makes complete sense. And lastly, if an agency were trying to knock down your door and attempting to win business from you, what advice would you give them?
I would probably, I would probably, first of all, see how much they know about us, right?
Yeah.
If someone's trying to discuss winning your business, they should know your business pretty well. There's nothing that I hate worse than the conversation is very short when they start talking to me about the things they do, and I say, well, let me ask you a question. What do we do? And if they don't have a clue what we do, it's probably not the right business, the right company to work with. So I find out how much they know about us, and if they seem to know what we do and know it well, that will keep the conversation going a little further. And then obviously, I want to know that we're not just going to be a number. We're not just one of 50 or one of 100. We're going to be somebody that they are going to do their best job at trying to help promote and help us grow.
That's great. Yep, great counsel. So, listen, Jerry, I really appreciate you making the time today. You've given us a lot of great perspective on the real estate market and the success that you've had, and kind of painting a picture of where the industry's going, and you guys seem to be leading the way. You've given us some great perspective on just the world of franchising, and how folks need to be thinking about that, and then also giving us some great perspective on the marketing and agency world, and some good counsel for marketers and agencies that are in the audience listening today. So appreciate it, and wish you all the best with Hommati. Hope it continues to go well, and you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Mark. I appreciate it. Thanks for your time and for the opportunity to speak to you.